So, yep. Now we're now live on Twitter. So, Randy, dude, I don't even know how to say your last name, man.
Nashleanas.
Nashleanas. Greek?
Yeah.
Nashleanas.
It's Lithuanian, actually.
Is it Lithuanian? But I mean, they had the
Yeah.
Greek Orthodox influence. I'm assuming that's kind of the cultural background of the last name.
From what I understand, yeah, I don't know too much about my family history or
Well,
where
yeah.
Nashleanas exactly comes from, but I know that in Lithuanian it means found us.
Found us. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Pulowski is from like the Pulaski. It's like old school Polish. It's like one of the royal like last names, but like to the point where everyone has it, so it doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
It's like one of those old last names. It's like they're not in power anymore, so it doesn't really mean anything. But good to have you on, man.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. This is exciting.
Yeah, I've just been kind of doing this lately to have conversation with people from different perspectives. I just want to go over like real quick because we were talking. Oh, we haven't talked like this in a long time. Just been like Facebook
Yeah.
posts and things like that. But right now you're in Medellin, Colombia,
hmm
and as you can see, I'm adorning the Colombian soccer jersey,
Amazing.
national team jersey, in honor of
Oh yeah.
your
So
location. But we know each other from a freshman year at University of Cincinnati, right?
that's right.
And just kind of went the same circles. I think it was because I was friends with the ballerinas and you were in music that we crossed paths, right?
Right. Yeah. Did that started with like Kristen and
And
then
Colette, I think too, right?
Colette. Yeah.
Axel. I'm just trying to think of other
Colette
people in that
Axel.
group. Yeah, Tyler. Did you know the guys
That was
Tiro and all? The guys on the second floor at all. Was that your floor? Because there's some people I knew from like where they lived, and there's some people I knew from like where they studied, and then certain people like who they hung out with. It's like different layers of like social levels, you know.
I think I was on the second floor. I just don't remember much who was on the floor really.
I
Oh
don't
my
know.
God, it's been so
I
long.
just
It's
that was
crazy
a fun year though.
how
That's all
fast
I
time
know.
has gone. And
And then crossing paths with people again, it's wild.
yeah,
But
for sure.
let's just get right into the questions because I did want to address this for anyone commenting. I have a Discord server. The links are I've posted enough of them. I'm not going to post another one. But Discord is a chat room essentially. So any chats you post are going to go directly to my Discord, and I will address them via there on my phone. So let's get right into it, brother.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm down.
This question's a little interesting, and I've worded it a few different ways. So I'm going to word it more simply this time, and then I can
Okay.
get into detail if you want me to clarify.
Sure.
Morality, your sense of like law and order, is that something that comes internal, or is that an external idea?
Um, I don't find too many people thinking so deeply these days about um, who they are. I mean, everything's all about the trends, right? I just feel like everyone's just so dependent on the trends, and me and my wife were watching like TikTok last night, and all those like cringe compilations, and people just they definitely have this like internal um, guide. I don't really know exactly how people can
Well,
find that.
and I think you'd mentioned this is probably something we'll get into later. You said you'd say you're an atheist, right?
I am.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. I didn't want to put words in your mouth because there is agnostic and there's different. I've explored all the
Right.
different brands because I was an atheist for a while, and I can only say that I've found what I consider faith for a year, and we can get into that. But the deeper part of the question I was asking is like order, law, good and evil is normally enforced by the state, and the state is a bunch of people agreeing upon what they find to be true, which is automatically an internal sense of right and wrong. I would argue that there's also an external, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it nature, something like that.
Hmm.
I believe that there is a natural law out there, that human beings, with or without us, there's a
Hmm.
natural order to the universe. And we interpret that, but it doesn't come internally. That's my answer to the question, if that clarifies it.
Yeah, that definitely clarifies it. I don't think so. You think God and like
Well, I can
you
acknowledge
think
both possibilities because I told you
you
I.
think the thought of God is or your thoughts are all an external source? I mean,
Well,
um,
in the sense that if I weren't around, it would still happen. That's the when I define God, I look at it as the flow of the universe sans certain properties. Like when you're talking about God, it's like, did God get in the way of that earthquake or a landslide? Like that would have killed me. It's like that landslide would have happened if I wasn't there, regardless. It's a
mhm.
lot of times like us being the eye of the keyhole, us existing, we're like the ones thinking that all this happening because I'm here. It's like, no, that would have happened if you were there regardless. You just happen to be able to perceive it. And then you draw your ego draws ties to why everything ties into that. Um, I forget why I
Well,
just got into that whole.
I mean, back in the day, before science took its toll, um, people thought God was the reasons why volcanoes erupted,
Why the sun came up and the moon would come
yeah,
up
yeah,
too.
exactly. But now we know how and why these things happen without God's you know hand in it.
His divine presence, yeah. Well,
What do you think about that?
well, I think that God itself is always been a placeholder for what we don't understand. And that's why I think God is eternal and everlasting. Because I don't think we can truly understand the universe. I mean, simply from the fact that our five senses are so limited, but we think they're eternal and perfect. Like we think that the way we perceive the universe through our touch, through our sight, through our taste. I mean, for what we know the universe is, once you get into particle physics, it's like we couldn't even begin to understand them with our natural senses. We had to develop tools with which, like, the whole concept of black hole. I don't know if you realize, like, we can't prove a black hole exists. We can prove everything around it acts in a certain way, and then we predict there's a black hole there. But scientifically speaking, you can't prove it. You can just disprove everything else around it, if that makes any sense. You've like limited the
Um,
definition of something, and to me, that's kind of what God is. It's like we can't pinpoint God. God is similar to a black hole. It's like we don't know what it is, but it's a placeholder for all the other things that are happening around it, and we can't explain it.
well, but we can't stop there, right? I mean, if we
No.
can't explain something, we can't just automatically assume that
Well,
it's God.
to me, it's
Um,
almost like a mental health check. It's like if I go deeper down that rabbit hole, I'm gonna be here all day. There's certain things that you do just
sure,
kind of
sure,
have to
sure.
bookmark, and to me, that's the other side of God. Is like God is like the concept of beauty. Like even as an atheist, you can listen to some great music or see some great art and go, whatever God is, whatever this divine flow of the universe is, that artist found it and was able to capture it in this song, in this piece of paper, this canvas, whatever it might be. Like they were the ones who like channeled that. They're just a conduit. The way I look at it is like the issue happens with artists a lot of times when they think they are the ones who came up with it. It's like, no, that art was there. You just let it go through you properly. You didn't resist. If that makes any sense.
It's really interesting, man. Um,
You can't own art.
I I got a lot to say. If we get down into it, I think here's a humanist in me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I give a lot of credit to artists, singer songwriters,
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff to them, and I'm also a singer songwriter, and you know if you're not a musician, you're not someone who's spent. I mean, I spent my whole life in the arts and just experimenting with my own hand-eye coordination
Oh yeah.
and my knowledge of okay, if you really want to like get down to like music and where it's derived from, it's like basically African tribal kind of stuff.
Yep.
um and then you get into the Renaissance and classical eras of music, with Bach and Mozart and all those guys.
Well, even just
um
when music
and
became more standardized and organized in the same fashion, because there's like the almost prehistoric eras of music where, like you're saying, there was no ways to repeat certain melodies. It was more just by ear. It sounded like you probably studied more than I have. That's just my guess based off what I know.
Right. I mean, Bach wouldn't be who he is if he didn't believe in God.
That's I've heard
I
about that. Yeah.
totally, yeah, yeah. I mean, every single thing he wrote, he believes that God, just gave it to him.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
I believe
um,
Beethoven did as well, didn't he?
Beethoven as
Especially in
well.
his later years.
Right, right, right. And it's
I mean,
even
Beethoven,
though
like,
even though I respect it, I don't believe that. I mean, Bach and Beethoven worked really hard, and that's all they did, man.
yeah. Well, for
It's
one
a
of the
very
things I want
rare
to tell you,
occasion.
I was just gonna
Go
say
ahead.
about like my conduit assertion is like, in no ways do I take anything away from the work, the talent, the
Mm,
creativity of the artist. In
for
no
sure,
way do I take that like they're still the
for
one
sure.
walking the walk. The way I look at it almost is if anytime you're an artist or a craftsman of any sort, when you're doing the beginner basic level stuff, someone has done that before. You're almost retreading a path. It's finding the paths people haven't gone down that is like the test of a good artist. Is you're like
Mm,
waiting until like anyone can just repeat like I play trumpet, but all I do is play the same stuff people have already like I play written music. I don't create any. I can't create. I'm like completely
well,
tone
why?
deaf to it.
Well, why can't you? I
I mean, I
mean,
totally could, but I
can
don't
you
feel
can
the
you?
flow. I don't feel like when I do it, it just complete chaos.
But have you tried?
Not really, and I really love the opportunity to, but really haven't gone out of my
Yeah,
way to make it so yet.
yeah. I mean, honestly, man, like you know, I think you should spend if you really wanted to. I mean,
Yeah.
God, it takes me forever to write music
Oh, I'm
or to
sure.
think of things, and then one night I'm like, just like, oh my God, I have so many good ideas, and I feel like it does kind of come out of nowhere, but never have I assumed it was anything else but me and
Yeah.
my and just I mean inspiration and creativity is something that's you can't teach those kind of things. It comes from within. But I still have a hard time finding that it's anything else other than the sparks just going off. You know,
Mm.
um, and I can understand why people would think that it's a divine intervention of some sort. Um, I have a hard time with it, but but there's a lot of other reasons why I think the way I think about God, other than music and art. And music and art is a thing that has brought me closer. When I was like 16, 15, I was super devout Christian,
Yeah.
and I remember going to church, and I was like, God, man, it's like like this music is like hitting me in all the right spots. And it was because of music,
Christmas
and
music always hit
and
that for me, man.
I feel you.
I
It's
always love
it's just
Christmas music.
it can be really powerful stuff. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I think people succumb to these beliefs, and
Mm.
which is fine. There's a lot of reasons why it is fine. There's a lot of reasons why I think it's not fine.
Well, and the one thing I do want
But
to say, I I found my faith, but it hasn't been in the conventional Christian methods. I'm not going to come over here touting a Bible to you, beating you over the head with it. I don't believe in that because that's not the path I took either.
mm,
Actually, if anything, I've taken more of an Eastern approach. It was Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism that kind of opened the door for
sure,
me to look at almost to read the Bible with another set of glasses on and like
sure, sure.
looking at it as a like anthropological story more than uh I don't something to take as the
Do,
story of our people, you know. I look at it as
do, do,
okay, if I was a smart person back then, what would I want to tell people to make them live a good life? Not verbatim what
sure.
happened to a man named Jesus Christ, but the same way we have these Marvel characters like Iron Man is like the Jesus Christ of our time. Like
Sure.
everyone's like, you want to be like Iron Man, you want to make this sacrifice for everyone. Spoilers for Endgame if you didn't watch it, but it's like he died for our
Yeah.
sins. It's the same freaking bullshit story. I mean, maybe I'm the first person to say Iron Man's Jesus Christ, but that's the same idea. It's like people need to think that sacrificing is worth it. And that's essentially the story of Jesus Christ. That's why Christianity is such a powerful religion. I mean, the more you look into Islam, it's actually this very similar story. It's submission to God's will. It's about sacrificing for the religion. And that's what a lot of these religions tell you. The problem is, I think their stories get out of date. That they're telling people to sacrifice, and over time, you're like, I'm not sacrificing for that shit anymore. It doesn't make any sense. And we do. I think I don't have the people off the top of my mind to say, but there's a lot of people I've drawn influence from who they say it's like, our religions need to be tweaked. They need to be maintained. They're not like these static things that we think all that they are, that they're these like immortal, eternal stories. It's, I mean, look at mythology. Like the way the Greeks looked at it is like every season it was like a new season of a TV show. They're like, what will Zeus be doing this year? Will he be getting killed by Hades? Will the god of all gods be dethroned? They didn't look at it as a static thing. They're just like, who's going to have the power this year? They looked at the astrology of it. They're like, oh shit, this is Aries year. We all going to war. Everyone's going to war because it's just Aries year. Right. They didn't think more about it than that. They're just like, I just hope I can give glory to Aries this year and murder a bunch of people. Right. And no one thought differently of it, you know? That's all they needed to hear.
There's this guy, I can't remember his name, but he brought up a good point about, Greek mythology. He's like, if there was a religion that I would like to, believe in, is a lot of the beliefs in Greek mythology where there's a god for everything.
Yep.
There's a god for the trees and the
that's
water.
Shinto. Shinto is a lot like that. The Japanese almost essentially the Japanese pagan religion is called Shinto, and they believe that all matter essentially has a limited part of conscious. So, like, the less conscious of a person you are, I'm completely paraphrasing. There might be some Shinto person who tell me I'm completely wrong. But the way I understand it is, like, the less of a conscious person you are, like, ethically, you will be in a lesser form of consciousness in your next life. You'll, like, be a rock, eventually. If you just keep acting like a rock when you get your opportunity to be a human, you'll just be a rock forever. But it's in being a better human that, like, the next opportunity, like, you'll be a slave 1 year, and then, like, the next lifetime you'll be a commoner. They believe that there's, like, a flow of energy to it. And to me, I'm like, that makes a lot more sense to Christianity. There's a lot less leaps in my mind. You can attribute it to yourself more,
Sure. I mean, the beautiful thing about, religions is that there's thousands of them, and you can learn from all of them, which I think you should.
Yes. And they're meant to be drawn from.
Right. I agree. And you said you were getting into the Baha'i?
Mm-hmm.
Baha'i?
Yeah, Baha'i, yes.
How do you say that?
I always just said Baha'i. I don't know. I don't really. I Americanize it. It might be Baha'i because I think it's based off Persian. I don't know. They do the little phlegm throat thing.
That religion reminds me. That's like the unity of all religions and equality of religion, right?
Real quick, I could actually, if we weren't doing the video call, I could pull it up on Wikipedia right now, but I'm not going to bother. I'll just do what's off the top of my head. There was a prophet called the Bab back then, and he was the teacher of Baha'u'llah. That wasn't his birth name, that was just the prophet name he got. But the Bab died, and he was the teacher. Baha'u'llah. Yeah, Baha'u'llah, which means glory to God in Arabic, I believe. But he was a Persian prince who went to like a forum, like a forum in Tehran, I believe, and he learned from the Bab. And then, like, the government people, I don't remember if it was the Mughal Empire at the time or whoever it would have been, but they murdered him. They killed him because he was preaching a message that Christianity was right, the Buddha was right, everyone was right, and they're just like, nope, done. Right, can't say that. Mm-hmm. And apparently, using his influence, Baha'u'llah was a prince. He could have just sat in a golden chair, but he gave it all. He rejected that life, became a commoner, and just spent his life on a pilgrimage teaching people the story of the Bab. And the Bab was just like his name for like he was a shaman, whatever prophet you want to call him back then. But he just spent his time preaching that message. And I haven't gotten into it deeper, but essentially the message is that all the prophets were trying to tell a different story. And this is exactly what I was told when I went to the Baha'i Temple in Chicago. They said, same light, different lampshades is the way they look at it. That all religions are drawing from the same light source, but like if you picture them, like you're just getting a different angle, you're getting a different perspective, you're getting, and that's why I love looking at religion as an anthropological tool more than a divine. It's almost a way that at our basis level, it's like the story we can tell for everyone for a certain culture, and that's one of the beautiful things about Christianity. It like is the essence of Western culture, whether you like it or not. Like the whole medieval era, we've replicated it onto other cultures and imperialism. It's hybridized.
Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, Spanish Inquisition. Well, even the Industrial Revolution going to Japan. Like Western, that whole Christianity went to Japan, even though they're not Christian. Like the influences went that way culturally because of the premises that were established in the Bible. You know, and
Okay.
and whether you believe them or not, it's like anthropologically, the people who did that stuff did. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And as a, I guess, spiritual person now, I'd say we need to almost guard Christianity against extinction, almost like the honeybees. It's like, yeah, you don't want to get stung by the bees, and having too many bees is an issue, but you don't want them to die. You don't. The last thing Western civilization needs is Christianity to get put in the gutter. That doesn't help anyone out, because there's a lot of militant atheists out there, some secular humanists who are a little on the militant side and who think that Christianity is the cause of all their problems, and I'm like, no, that ain't true at all. That's I mean, there's some people who are motivated improperly for it.
Militant people on both ends, right?
That's true. That's what I was just switching to too, because there are some people who they interpret the Word of God, and they're just interpreting it wrong. It's like it doesn't mean the Bible's wrong. It just means that there's a 50-50 chance you're doing something right or wrong, and there's some people who do it wrong.
So in society, it's interesting you say that. So in society, let's say that I'm Jewish and you're a Christian. We can be best friends, forever.
Right.
But if you take a million Christians and a million Jews, you take a million Jews and a million, what was
You're saying taking a bunch of Jews and a bunch of Christians and putting them in the same room, essentially.
You put it in the same room, and there will never be peace. And that's why in a smaller societal
setting,
setting.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Sorry, man. I'm like,
no, you're good.
I'm more of a typer.
That's why I'm a server, man. That's why I like to be a good host. I'll get that word in your mouth if you need it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah. So in a smaller setting, I think religion works very well. On a global scale, I think it
dilutes itself the larger the sample size. Because the less guidance that can be. I mean, it's funny, like the way we look at the Catholic Church now, it's a relic, but there was a time where the Catholic Church was probably actually pretty venerable. They were probably true. I mean, not to say that there wasn't corruption. Obviously, there always has and will be corruption in an institution like that. But based off the success of certain regions, you have to say there's probably some good priests out there who were giving people exactly the mental health support they needed, who were giving them the proper life coaching they needed. Like, there's people, like, just if you want to look at the Crusades, there was priests who got people to walk across Europe to the desert and die for God. Mm. You can say that's right or wrong, but the men of that clergy were definitely providing something to people, a purpose in their lives. We can argue whether it was a valuable purpose or not, but if you just look at that as like
this money or not,
exactly. But if you just want to look at the cohesiveness of your community and the mental health and stability of the people in it, whether or not they were happy they were going, like if you could stop and be like, dude, do you want to be going on this crusade? Like they might not actually have that thought because God wills it. They're just thinking that's the ultimate thing. But where was I going with that? I was just saying like they were probably happy doing that. They like their concept of God, their faith probably protected them. They're probably like, you know what? They probably didn't have to second guess it. I think that's the thing about faith. It's like you don't second guess it. You just know that to be true. And, you know, a lot of
Right.
times faith gets taken for ignorance, but it's almost willful ignorance. Like I had said earlier, is like my God, when I say anything that's attributed to God, is something I don't understand. But it's not like, I think that's probably one of the biggest issues with overly religious people sometimes, is they'll take their faith and be like, okay, I'm done. That's what I believe there. It's like, no, 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 no. That's a
Right.
bookmark, and bookmarks are meant to be reopened. And if you just kind of leave stuff there to percolate, you're never going to grow. Whether it's an ideological principle or behavior you exhibit,
Well,
you know?
I think that the ignorance is, even though it is willful, you know, you can't. It's really hard, and it was hard for me to question more than the absolute truth. And once I stepped out of just reading the Bible, because
Mm-hmm.
I was really devout, you know, I was digging it hardcore,
Catholic, or was
um,
there a particular branch of Christianity you followed?
non-denominational.
Non-denominational. I think that's the
Which
best
is
way to
funny,
go.
right? Which is funny too. They're recorded. There are over 42,000 different denominations of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Over 42,000, and 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 so you take that number, and then you take everyone in those churches who also have a different belief in the Bible.
Exactly.
And so how do you know if you are more right than the other because your moral choices are better? You don't have tattoos. You
Oh,
don't,
oh,
if
that's
you believe in
the
the Old
stuff
Testament,
like that.
all
That's
that
some of
kind
the
of
worst
stuff.
kind of stuff. Old Testament
I
versus New
know, but
Testament, tattoos.
yeah.
It's all
Well,
virtue
here's what I'm
signaling to
saying.
me on a religious level. You know,
Mhm.
it's completely unfair judgment too.
On whose part?
On the part of the person lacking experience. I personally, I got a tattoo just last year just because I had a
Mhm.
prejudice against people with tattoos. You know, I was just,
So
I
why did you have
did
that? Why'd you have that prejudice?
because I realized it was a prejudice I didn't hold. It was like a prejudice that I'd carried with me because of people. Well, for one thing, neither of my parents have tattoos. How about that for a start?
Okay.
Majority of my grandparents, none of them have tattoos at all. So if you want to look at that as like a child bedrock,
Yeah.
that's it. And
Hmm.
then from me, the people who had tattoos were also a lot of times people who smoked. I never smoked. So
Hmm.
when you look at that compounding, I always looked at tattoos as something bad. But obviously, I got older. I ran into more people with tattoos who obviously lived a fine and happy life. And eventually, I was just
Right.
like, you know what? I'm sick of like none of my close friends from high school and stuff. I'm
Hmm.
the only, if not one of the few, that has a tattoo. There might
Hmm.
be I'm saying like my best friends, none of them have tattoos. So I was just kind of like, you know what? I need to like, even for the sake of my friend group, be one person who did, just because I don't think it's a
Right.
bad thing,
And
and I need to prove that, you know.
was it like a you wanted to was it like a fit in thing? Was it
No,
like a
no, I actually
you
wanted the
know?
tattoo too. It wasn't simply,
Hmm.
I wasn't doing it simply out of spite or anything like that.
Hmm.
Shoot, I don't know if I can line it up in the shot here. There we go.
Okay.
That's in Infinity Science and Ouroboros in Greek for tail-eating serpent, and the mythological symbology behind it is brilliant. I could do a whole stream on that, but
Hmm.
that particular design is from a show I really liked called Altered Carbon. It's on
I saw a little bit
Netflix.
of that. I saw like the first
Yeah,
couple episodes.
I
It was
loved
pretty
it.
cool.
I thought it was really good. I
Yeah.
loved it. Um, but yeah, it's that tattoo was the main character can switch bodies in the future, and
Mm.
so he's like 2,000 years old because but he's like special forces. Like he's used to switching bodies, almost like Neo in the Matrix, like getting plugged in. Like he'll just
Right.
deactivate one body and like pop up in another one. And then
Yeah.
like he
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
no, like most people get sick off doing that. He's like used to it. So he does that so
Uh,
often that this tattoo is how he remembers which body is his original, because he's not even in his birth body anymore. So he has like a
right.
mental
Right.
fugue where he like doesn't know which one is
Yeah.
real.
I check that show out again.
Yeah.
I remember liking it. It was pretty
If you
brutal.
like Blade Runner, you'll love Altered Carbon. That's my go-to. Like,
Blade Runner.
yeah,
that what you said?
Blade Runner, yeah. It's the same
Yeah,
art
yeah.
style. It explores a lot of the same sci-fi concepts. So
Right.
it's a recommendation
Yeah.
I make. But we got really off the
Cool,
trail.
cool.
I have 6
Yeah.
questions. Why don't we get to the other 5? I
Sure,
haven't
sure.
seen anything in the chat, which either means I didn't do the Discord right, which is totally possible. But I don't know if anyone's in the Facebook chat. I haven't gone to anything yet. I'm not even in the watch party, but it doesn't matter. We're recording to YouTube also, so it's
Yeah.
all good. So second question, I start off really deep. I actually go a little lighter here now.
Okay.
What is the earliest happy memory you have?
The earliest happy memory.
Yeah, first you can go back. I've been saying that like one of the earliest for me was the smell of my grandfather's garden when I was really little. Like he had a
Uh-huh.
big garden with tomatoes and everything, peas, all that stuff. I just remember the smell of it on like a summer day. That's like one of my
Yeah.
earliest happy memories.
I think uh I think my earliest happiest memory and the funniest to me at the time. Was probably like first grade. And I was playing cops and robbers with my dad. And it was just me and my dad playing cops and robbers. And and I was a cop, my dad was a bad guy. And and I was like uh I forgot what the scenario was, but I remember my dad falling, and I was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like trying to give him water, like
You're
a
just
jug
trying
of
to help him.
water. Do what?
You were just trying to help him.
Yeah, I was trying to help him, and I poured this jug of water. I was trying to do it in his mouth, and ended up dropping and spilling the whole jug of water on my dad's face. And that is my early. I remember that so vividly, just that moment, and
I
we
love it.
laughed for forever, like the rest of the day. It was so funny, and
Dude,
that's
that's
like my earliest, happiest, funniest memory.
That's great. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It's those little
yeah,
memories are like the strong ones. It's never something like everyone
yeah,
thinks of like when you got up on stage at school. It's like nah. It's the ones where you're just laid back.
yeah, man. It's like you never think it would just stick with you, you
Right.
know. Um,
I have a couple random vivid
and
memories too.
yeah, sure.
They have like no context.
Yeah.
Like one, I remember my parents took me to Sesame Street Land in Philadelphia or whatever, but I didn't remember like meeting Grover or any of those people. Like I literally remember standing in line in the rain. I just remember the rain coming down in a dark place where we like took cover. Don't remember the rides, don't remember any of the people at the park. I just remember like cuddling up with my family in the cold in the rain when on that day. Like it's
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
crazy how the brain works. It's like you'd think I'd remember the more like I don't know, significant
Sure,
stuff,
sure,
but
sure. Is that um? It's like sensory memory. Like,
it is.
have you ever remembered that moment when it rained?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
I'm
and
sure.
that's why I mentioned smell cuz one of the most vivid ones for me is my grandfather's garden because they
Mm,
say your a scent of smell is your best form of memory. Like it's the most consistent.
right, right.
Because anytime I
Which makes
smell
sense too if you think about it.
exactly well, and just from a biological perspective, from what, adaptation. No, there's a better word for it,
Hmm.
but from a biological fitness is what I'm looking for. You'd want
Okay.
your nasal memory to be the best. You know, if you're looking to be the best biological human you could be, I guess your most important sense would probably be smell overall. That's how you can tell food's bad. So many basic things. But like whenever I
Sure.
smell fresh tomatoes, it takes me back
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
that. That's exactly what you're talking about. But
That's
that's
funny.
good.
Yeah, every time I see a water jug and water jugs always feel the same. I think about that moment, dude,
Oh, really?
I almost giggle every time I see a jug of water.
That's fantastic. I'll
Yeah, yeah.
I'll have to remember. Come visit Medellin. I'll bring you a jug of water as a peace offering.
God, I need to be drinking more water too.
That
But I
yeah
might.
yeah. PSA: make sure you're drinking water. Actually,
Yeah,
I just finished my tea a little bit ago, and I got a bottle of water I've been sipping.
nice.
All right,
Yeah.
let's go to another question. We can get through them, and the nice thing is once we get through the questions, we can just go wherever we want. Because the main thing
Sure,
about the questions is I wanted everyone to be on the show to be asked the same things and like compare and contrast like how people answer them.
sure.
So, third question: What is the most controversial stance that you hold that you wish you could talk about more often? Because like if it's something you talk about wear on your sleeve, no, something you kind of bottle up.
It probably is my atheism.
Yeah.
I I think you know, but I teach music online,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of my students, I mean, gosh, they could even see this. A lot of my students and their parents, very religious, and I have a guitar student who whose mom just wants me to. I mean, I I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I mean, I
No,
don't mind at
no.
all. But she just wants him to learn Christian music, which is
Oh,
fine. And and
in Colombia, I'd
and
expect
my
that. It's pretty conservative Christian there at times.
mhm. And my stance is like, yeah, we can learn whatever you want him to learn. I just want him to be able to have his, it's because a lot of Christian music that I've discovered, because I used to play in a Christian band too. I used to play bass,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it's just kind of the same sort of repetitive chord progressions, at least. Um,
Musically, I
and
wouldn't know that, but yeah, I can
Yeah, yeah. I
imagine.
mean, it's just like, you have a guitar and you play a G chord, an F chord, E chord, whatever, and it's usually just the same thing over and over again. But like you learn some Beatles licks, you
All
learn
right.
some cool jazzy chords that you don't really find in that world of music.
Oh, you don't get I never played bass, but I've always told my dad, I'm like, Dad, listen to the bass line on this song, and my dad's like, I can't hear
It's
it. I'm just
it's
like, dude,
always
when you hear nice like even like something simple like Johnny
yeah.
Be Good, you know
Uh-huh.
that kind of like that was the first kind of stuff. Like as a kid, I was like, you hear that walking bass line, you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know what it is, but something's happening there. Doom, doom, doom,
Yeah.
doom, doom. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The bass is the bread and butter, man.
oh man,
I mean,
like
it's really the meat
I,
of
I
of,
play
of,
I
of the
play
burger.
brass, and I love
Uh-huh.
brass. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I don't care if it's a string bass or a tuba, sousaphone, whatever.
Yeah.
That always lays down the foundation of anything, man.
Oh,
Like
definitely, definitely.
it's completely changes the
Yeah,
tune. But
definitely. That's why the cello is cool, and the
j-
cello is cool because it goes low and it can play very high, very operatic sort of things too.
honestly,
I
one of
think
the things I
cello
remember
is
most from you
is
is your carbon fiber cello.
oh yeah,
Do
yeah,
you
it's
still
right
have that
behind me.
bad boy? Okay, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
I could probably
remember.
play something for you too. If you want.
Oh shit. Well, how about we save that for the end if you're good.
Sure, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
I'd totally be down. You know
Cool.
any? I don't even know what would sound good on cello. I mean, probably a lot of things. I would say like, you know any Lord of the Rings?
I can figure some Lord of the Rings out.
Okay, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah.
That I normally like on my trumpet for myself. I mostly play Star Wars and Lord of the Rings just because I think they're
Nice.
awesome,
Yeah, yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
just fun tunes to
Those are big.
play.
Those are big brass songs right there.
Oh, great brass. Well, and I started off on French horn. So Lord of the Rings, I don't know how much you know about that score in particular, but Howard
Hmm.
Shore had a at least half chub for French horns and when he was writing Lord of the
Oh yeah,
Rings.
yeah, yeah. You want to know something cool? My uncle is a pretty well known composer.
Oh, really?
And he plays steel pan, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. I know
and
what
he
you're talking
and
about.
he incorporates steel pan into like very contemporary classical music.
Like
I,
orchestral
I,
classic or like smaller
Yeah,
band?
orchestral, small ensemble stuff too. Very rhythmic, very intense.
Hmm.
I think you'd like it. He plays
Yeah.
with chopsticks too sometimes.
Interesting.
I got to show you. But
That sounds interesting.
he's actually friends with Howard Shore,
Is
which
he?
is cool.
That's wild.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, yeah.
It's cool to be
And
in the
Howard
same
Shore also did
circle.
the music to Silence of the Lambs and stuff.
Yeah,
And
he did a
he
few
went to his
things.
house and what's up?
I say he did a few things. I forgot. He's known for Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, obviously, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
realistically, if you want to look at like individual like skill, like I'd say Howard Shore rivals like John Williams, and John Williams has done quite a bit.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's like John
Yeah,
Williams and
yeah,
Hans
yeah.
Zimmer have done a lot. Like I feel like
Yeah,
those two are
yeah.
the gold standard. But I think as far as
Mhm.
talent goes for writing, like what was it called? Screen? No,
Uh, just
when you write for a soundtrack, when soundtracks for movies,
yes,
I think he's
yeah,
as
yeah,
talented. His body of work might be smaller.
yeah. I agree. Howard Shore picks his stuff
He
carefully too, and
does.
Hans Zimmer just does
He's like,
everything.
I'll do whatever.
You
He's
know,
like, I don't care if it's a crappy
and
movie, if it's a crash grab, I'll
and
do it.
and yeah, when you hear Hans Zimmer, you know it's Hans Zimmer.
But that man is
Um,
talented, regardless of his
it's
choice of
cool.
scores.
Yeah, yeah, he's it's good stuff, man. I mean, I love the Batman stuff.
Batman was great. Even Inception, like the
Oh
song
yeah,
Time. He did Gladiator. Loved Gladiator's
yeah,
soundtrack. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
I'm not taking anything away from
yeah,
Hans Zimmer. It's just all three of those
oh
guys.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I could listen to their soundtracks for movies like
yeah.
forever. But
Yeah, Howard Shore, I think is one of the more eclectic. Um, like Signs of the Lambs sound is completely different
oh yeah,
than Lord of the Rings. You know,
completely, yeah.
um,
Hans Zimmer, you always know
so
when you're listening to a Hans Zimmer song, and John was the same way. You're definitely
right,
right.
right,
Howard Shore likes to vary his compositions. It's not going to be the same.
yeah, right.
Perfect. Well, here I'll hit you with another question because we're already halfway done now.
Okay, okay.
This one actually I changed up a bit. So, in a collapse scenario in a post-apocalyptic world, what is your go-to item of choice? What's one thing that, let's say, you can conjure up? What's the one thing you're gonna snag to make life easier on you?
Huh.
Take your time. I realize some
Never
of these
thought about
questions.
that.
Yeah, that's what these questions are for. I didn't want them
I'm
to be
trying to.
questions. You're just like, bam.
Yeah, I like the question a lot. I'm looking at the scenery and imagining if I was in Medellin and it was just like nothing.
Society doesn't matter anymore. You don't have to worry about
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
electricity's not there. Good luck on running water.
Yeah, yeah. Probably like a one of those like water filters,
I
you
was
know,
thinking something like that.
like the straw, you know, or maybe a like a gun.
And that's the thing is like I initially made it a weapon because that was my goal. I was curious, but
Hmm.
my dad's like, why does it have to be a weapon? Why don't you make it an item? Because it might be a survival tool.
Yeah,
But I kind of wanted to
right.
make it weapon because the first that's what I was curious. Like, what would you go for? Because like I think of like zombie scenario. It's
Yeah.
like obviously it's a metaphor, but it's like what would you want? Would you rather have a blade or would you rather have a gun? I personally would rather have a blade. I'd rather have a traditional
Hmm.
Japanese katana, like the folded metal kind, the kind that can cut through
Sure, sure.
other kinds of steel. Because
Right.
realistically, the utility and the defense capability that like I could use that for everything.
Definitely. They make I think they make these machetes that are like,
Yes,
5-in-1s, you
yes.
know?
Those there's some
So they
good
have like
machetes
all
out there
the
too.
yeah.
That would be a good use.
That would probably be my yeah, if it was a zombie situation,
Some sort of a
probably
good
that.
we could agree on a good blade, one that would be good for like utility and defense.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
Water filtration's also up there. I mean, those survival
Yeah,
straws or the sort like even if you had like a little I don't even know like a little machine that you could hand crank to have
right.
clean water.
I mean,
That's huge.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I don't think
those
either of us
straws are
probably
really
know
crazy now. I mean, you can drink piss water and
through those straws,
it'll
those
be
survival
clear.
straws. Yeah, I've seen those things. I've never had one, but I've heard they're wild.
I mean, geez, you can just I mean, if you had the water purifier, I mean, you can just keep peeing and drinking it and peeing and drinking it.
I think there's got to be a conservation of water somewhere in there. You can't keep drinking the
Yeah.
same pee water. Eventually, you're going to run out of water
Well,
because you're sweating some of that out. You know.
yeah, there's like little channels of water everywhere around here, so
Yeah, you should
you'll
be
be fine.
fine. You should be fine. It gets pretty rainy there too, so at least it
So
does in
so you're
Bogota.
so in a post-apocalyptic non-zombie scenario, what
Mm.
would you pick?
What would I pick? I guess it kind of changes because I've said a few things. My go-to is always the katana because I feel like
Okay.
I could use that to. Well, the thing is, it's such a fine blade that you could use it for small things too. Like you could etch things with it. You could just the amount of utility. Like I could make tools with that. That's one of the main things.
Hmm.
Like I would want just a really good piece of worked metal that I could make tools with. Like, I'm not that good at making tools, but if you give me a blade, enough time, and the will to survive, I'll figure something out, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
or I won't, but I'd like to go down
Man,
swinging, you know.
I did that a lot in Nepal.
Did you?
I was
But I mean,
uh
given that, you'd say the value of like a good worked piece of metal is probably very valuable in a place like Nepal.
oh yeah,
They
yeah. I mean,
like,
especially when you're trying to, like with pickaxes, for instance. Not that they necessarily had to be sharp, but they had to be, they would break a lot.
right.
And so I would try to think of ways to reinforce them without drills and without. I mean, all we had were kukuris, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the like Nepali swords,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
I know kukri.
And yeah, yeah. So you just you're cutting bamboo and you're tying stuff with bamboo, and we're cutting up tires and wrapping them around and hammering nails in them to reinforce these pickaxes
That's wild.
on literal like these logs, you know. And I spent a lot of time. I think I have some stuff on Facebook of this hammer that I made from just like hammer, and then skimming down this log. It's
Dude, I gotta
crazy.
check that out. It's on your Facebook or
Yeah, I think so. Not a video, but
okay.
just I have a picture of me with it. I'm like smoking a cigarette, and trying to be cool.
I'm sure it looked
But
cool.
um, Nepal was great, man. Just, gosh, that's a memory of mine that I wish I could relive
Did
sometime.
you go there purely for the experience, or did you go there on a? I think you did
No,
some Peace Corps or something.
it was so it all started with AmeriCorps,
AmeriCorps.
and
I know, yeah.
I
I
did
remember posting
AmeriCorps
about it
and
when
found
you
this
went
one.
to it.
Do what?
I was just saying, I remember you posting about it when you went, and I was like, ah, that's totally
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, 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 yeah. It was cool. It was a little bit too strict
Was it?
for because it's all government funded. There's a lot of rules,
Hmm.
uniforms, all this kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
I think you don't need all that to help people.
No.
And it was more of a thing. I think actually Trump cut funding for the NCCC, which is what I was in.
Oh, really?
I don't really know why he did that, but honestly, I'm bittersweet towards AmeriCorps. It taught me a lot about like resume building and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
It taught me a lot about the professional world more than it did the importance of volunteering, I think.
Interesting.
But through
Is
AmeriCorps, I
it was it
found
just the
all
people in the program that helped you, or was it the program itself? It was designed in a way that was very good for resume building.
the program itself
Okay,
was
because
was
sometimes it's
really
just like
good. Was
a personal interaction you had. Someone was just really took an interest in it. You know.
Yeah, the program itself was really good at building those skills. It was just too the rules, man. Like you can't swear, you can't. It's just you're just this robot. It was like
Uh,
mini military in a way.
well, I guess that's like
But
that. You know, if it's a government program, I'm sure they want to portray a certain view of Americans
which
if
which
they have
is which is
control
fine,
over.
which is
Yeah.
cool, and I think it helps a lot of people who are in a dark place, which I kind of was at the time too. I didn't really
Interesting.
have a lot going for me after Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually going. What started that before that, I was like smoking weed in my car, and I get pulled over by a cop, and I go to jail for a week. You know,
Yeah.
and so that triggered this. Okay, what can I do? I'm broke. Like Cincinnati's gone. You know,
Yeah.
I don't like staying in one place for too long. And what was cool about AmeriCorps is that
Be-
everything's paid for. You
oh.
know,
Well. Yeah. Okay.
so everything was free. You apply and
Huh.
you pass a drug test and all this kind of stuff. You get like a living stipend, and it's a
Wow.
year of your time. And it was cool because I learned a lot of skills, man. I learned how to paint. I learned how to, put up foundations for houses, put up
Yeah.
siding, all drywall. I started loving drywall because of that. And but going just real quick, I found
Yeah.
this organization called All Hands Volunteers. Um, and then within All Hands, we went to Detroit in AmeriCorps, and then I fell in love with All Hands so much that I actually left AmeriCorps and just joined All Hands right then and there.
Okay.
Um, and so I was in
And you did
Detroit
like you
for
went from one right to the other, or
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because All Hands was where it was at.
yeah.
Like All Hands is also something that you'd have to pay for. You get there and they pay for your food and your lodging. And so I
Damn.
was like, fuck yeah, dude, I want to help people. And
And have my living taken care of.
yeah, yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
yeah.
And I learned
That's
how to
not a
do
bad
all
deal.
these things. And so through all hands, I applied for this job position within the organization called the Global Service Fellowship, and it's a 1 year long. 1 year. It's like 1 year long of going to different projects around the world and trying to see what you could do, what the organization could do better within
Hmm.
each project. So I spent 6 months in Nepal. That was like my first half of the Global Service Fellowship, and then I came back to the U.S.
And then
and
you
went to
spent some time. It
Texas.
was in Detroit. Oh, I thought you said Detroit. And spent some
So I
time
was
in
in
Texas.
Detroit. I was in Detroit with All Hands first, and then
Oh,
I
okay.
joined the GSF,
Okay,
and
okay.
then
I just had the
spent
timeline
time.
switched.
So you spend 6 months abroad and 6 months in the States,
That's not a bad way to
and that
do it.
was it was cool. It was
Yeah.
cool. And so I was there, getting paid to kind of help the organization, at least the project grow in a lot of different ways in terms of volunteer coordination, logistics, and all that kind of stuff. So
Damn.
yeah,
I had thought about doing something
learned a
like
lot.
that. I kind of regret not. I mean, I guess I still could if I want to, but I don't know. It's like the ship hasn't sailed, but that sounds
Hmm.
like just to go to Nepal in particular, that's a really cool
Hmm.
place to go. I mean, I'm sure, were there other options that you knew of at the time instead of Nepal, or was it just that for
So
that
they
time
they kind
period?
of told you where to go. They told you
Okay.
where to go. You're actually supposed to spend 3 months somewhere and 3 months in another place
Oh, okay.
abroad. But I love Nepal so much that I just stayed the full length.
So, yeah.
But I was supposed to go to Fiji,
Ooh.
because there was a crazy,
Uh,
I think it was a tsunami or
yeah.
something
A
or something.
typhoon or whatever they call them.
But yeah, a typhoon.
Yeah. I think it's because
But
it's in the
yeah,
Pacific. It's a typhoon.
right. Yeah, Fiji got messed up, but I was just so
Dude, if you could
invested
have
in
gone to
Nepal. I
Nepal and
learned the
Fiji, that would
language.
have been wild, man.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I just love Nepal too much to leave it.
I
I
get
was just
that
way
though.
too invested in it.
Yeah, especially I'm sure there's some people you met that you just wanted to stick around longer with. That's how it is for me at
Yeah,
least. That's
yeah, yeah.
cool.
Well, it's crazy because you go on these projects and you stay there for 6 months, and every 2 weeks, dude, volunteers, you know, 50 volunteers would leave, and then 50 more volunteers would come in, and every 2 weeks it was different people every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so you just meet people from all around the world, just continuously, like every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, man. It was just like, God, it was a lot to take in, man. But you're not, man. I wasn't really there for the people. I mean, I
No?
was just there, not for the volunteers. I was there for the
For the
Nepalis.
Nepalis. Well, and,
So
and, and I even met, I'm sure there's some certain Nepalis people you met that were like, I don't want to,
mm,
I want to take you with me
yeah,
or
I
whatever.
stuck
Like,
around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a dog in particular that I
oh,
wanted
they're
to take
even
with me.
better,
Yeah,
man. I'm a dog
yeah,
person.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. Me too.
That's,
Um, but yeah, it was a beautiful experience, man. I loved it.
that's great.
But
Uh,
and it's weird. It's weird too because like when I was in Detroit, people abroad really appreciated the help more than people in the States did.
I can imagine.
Because I was in Detroit working in these basements, hot, like just, and it was never like a thank you situation. It was like, well, yeah, it's my house. Like I should be getting help. Everyone's
Uh,
pissed off all the time, so it's
the lack of gratitude from Americans.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can definitely
They just take everything for granted, man. They
sense
do.
of entitlement maybe too that
That's true.
that's
Yeah.
owed to them. Yeah,
Right.
that's the ugly side of nationalism when you think our country's so great that
Hmm.
certain services like that are just spoken for and uh,
Right.
yeah, I think people forget how far gratitude goes, whether it's required
Hmm.
or given voluntarily, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
But
For sure.
I got two more questions. Let me hit you with one other, and
Let's
then we'll
do
be
it.
done.
Cool.
What is one simple life lesson you wish everyone in the world would have to learn? Yeah, I know, man. These I respect the amount of thought you put into these because
Yeah.
I'm a lot like you.
Um, Probably what I just said, man.
Yeah.
Don't take things for granted.
Actually, that's a good
I mean,
transition. That's a good transition then, because you're
yeah. I
right.
mean, what's up?
I'm saying that's a good transition because exactly what we were just talking about. That is a great lesson. That uh,
Yeah.
I guess to put it succinctly, the healthy respect for gratitude. It's like knowing what gratitude means to you and knowing what it means to others. Because I think sometimes people only crave gratitude for themselves, but they don't understand the karmic balance of it. That if you're not showing gratitude to others, you're never gonna receive any gratitude back either. So
Right.
it's a two-way
That
street. That's where the entitlement comes
that's
into play.
that's a lesson that I learned watching Labyrinth. Have you seen that movie?
Pan's Labyrinth or
No, Labyrinth with
Labyrinth?
David Bowie.
No.
Oh man.
I know which one you're talking about. Like I know that
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
exists, but I never watched it.
yeah.
It's kind of
So just
never-ending story kind of vibe
a
to
little
it.
bit, yeah. It's
Yeah,
like puppets and all
yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah. I know what you're
But
talking about.
there's one scene in it where Jennifer Connelly's in the movie,
Okay.
and so she's trying to find her baby brother in this labyrinth. Um, and she's like running through the labyrinth, and she's running straight forever, like just running straight. And she runs into this little worm, and the worm is like, she's like, oh, there's like turns everywhere. Like just you can't take things for granted. Just because it looks like there's no turn doesn't mean there isn't one. And so Jennifer Connelly's like looking, and as she looks closer to the walls, there's turns all over the place that she missed for miles. And that was the first time I learned don't take things for granted.
Okay, so
And
you
that
like
changed
watched
my
that
mindset.
early. You watched that early. It
Yeah,
was just a very impressionable thing. Okay.
yeah, definitely,
I
definitely.
get you. I mean, honestly, I have impressionable moments like that all the time. I don't
Yeah.
know. Just to retort real quick with one I don't think I've said on the podcast before is recently it really struck me like a year or two ago. It was just the phrasing of it. I guess I always understood the lesson, but it was just like kids are just parents are just kids having kids, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like such a simple concept. You hear it at face value, you're just like yeah, but when you really just look at like identify when you see a parent and just
Hmm.
see them as a kid having a kid, there's a
Right,
certain
right.
like level of insight I think it shows. It's like you
It's interesting.
forget that like I don't know, when I was a kid I always assumed that like all parents like had these conventions. They're like, okay, so we're all doing timeout for this long, we're all.
Right.
It's not always the case, not always the case at all. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
interesting.
that kind of changed. And the thing is, I've been repeating that lately. I'm the oldest of all my cousins, so
Hmm.
I've said that a few times, like my younger sister. I just like remind them,
Hmm.
like, hey, they're just kids having kids. They don't know if they're doing this right. Like getting frustrated with parents and stuff. I'm like, I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
remind them, like, your parents love you, right? Like, yeah.
Hmm.
There's no guarantee they're doing it right. They're just their emotions are where they want you to be, but their actions and
Yeah.
behavior might not link up with.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That was really insightful for me.
Yeah,
Last
yeah, yeah.
question. Last question here.
Okay.
Would you rather be the smartest person in a dumb world or the dumbest person in a smart world?
I mean,
If you had your
if I'm gonna be
choice.
honest, if I'm gonna be honest with myself, I'd rather be the smartest person
Yeah?
in the dumb world. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it just depends on who thinks that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason, yeah, I like Trump, but I don't think I would be friends with him.
No, I don't think so
And
either.
and I think he would say the same thing.
That's fair.
And I think the way that he looks at things, because he already thinks he's the shit,
He does.
which is
I
why I
respect
think
that.
yeah, I respect him, man. I mean, even though he makes mistakes just like everyone else does,
Yeah.
he just doesn't, and sometimes he just doesn't own up to it. But he
Mm.
doesn't want to. He doesn't want to seem weak. He doesn't want to seem, that he's less than, because he's got a lot on his plate.
Oh, he doesn't have
He's
time to be apologizing. That's one of my
yeah,
favorite things, how
exactly,
unapologetic he is. You get all these
exactly.
other people that are his, and you can see why they don't win elections against him because they spend all this time apologizing for their behavior. Trump's like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah,
Okay, next thing I'm doing. On to the
right.
next one. He's like, I don't got time to
Yeah,
even evaluate whether that was a good
yeah,
decision or not. He's like, I did it,
yeah,
so I know it was great. And it's like, whether that's
yeah.
true or not, that's the demeanor you should have if you're trying to be productive, especially in this quagmire of politics we got going on right now. Part of the reason why
I
I'm doing this
agree.
show is just because, like, I would assume most people who meet us, you and I,
Mm,
if we never brought up politics, I don't assume most people would assume we support Trump. I know for
Right.
me, I'm also guessing you, especially being a musician, given going to Peace Corps, all these things, the AmeriCorps, doing all the things you've done. If people were to identify you, label you, just like I would assume
Right.
they would me, they'd probably say, I don't know, Warren, Sanders, something. No,
Right.
Trump,
You know what's
baby.
crazy, dude? I voted for Clinton, and
Did
until
you?
this day, dude, it wasn't until Trump did his whole Korean thing that I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
wow. I was like, this guy just blew my mind. He already did more than Obama did in 8 years.
Yep.
It just in the first
And the thing is,
couple months.
people are talking shit because lately the peace talks have quieted and have they apparently some conciliations have been made to North Korea, but realistically, it was a monumental moment for an American president to go into North Korea, and for the South
Right.
Korean president, like that
Just let him
alone.
in.
That alone is monumental, and you can never
Yeah.
take that away from Trump. Whether these peace talks stall out or not, the North Koreans are a very principled people, and the actions that occurred weren't taken lightly. You know,
Hmm.
you almost have to look at Kim Jong Un as like uh, um, an ADD special needs kid at his house. It's like when he lets you in,
Right.
it's not an insult. You know, it's I've
Yeah.
worked with special needs people, and like they're very particular about how things are, and that's the way you have to look
Yeah.
at Kim Jong Un. He's like he wants everything to be in order, and if he let the South Korean and American president in, things must be in a pretty good place. I don't know what they said.
Right.
I don't speak Korean.
Yeah.
I assume Trump is awful at Korean, but he got shit done. I assume he
Yeah.
surrounded himself with good diplomats who did the job. So, um,
Right. I can't remember a single thing that Obama did. Like I don't even know.
the thing is, all he
I
ever
really
did
don't know.
all he ever did was
Obamacare.
reassure the American people. All he ever did was talk
Yeah.
about things. But like you said, you know what happened?
Hmm.
We got Obamacare. I mean, I don't know. Like
Which is whatever.
I like let's not even get into that, man. Like
What was the question? What was the question?
the question was smartest person in a dumb world or dumbest person in a smart world,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
said smartest
It
person in a dumb
depends,
world.
man. So what would you choose?
Well, I'm gonna outline the question and then I'm gonna reply. It's really at the end of the day is it would you rather be the perpetual student or the perpetual teacher? And you answered perpetual teacher. You'd rather share the wisdom you've gotten, and to me that's the more mature response. I would have to say I struggle with that one because actually I flip flop.
Weird. Weird.
I would
Well,
actually say
when you,
right
when you
now.
when you state it that way, if you
Well,
if
that
you were
at
going
the
to be
core
the
of the
student
question,
or
that's
the
really
teacher,
what that at the core of the question, that's really what it is. Because if you're surrounded by dumb people, just I'm getting over the antics of the words I'm choosing. But if you're surrounded by people who know less than you do and process things not as up to par as you do on average, you are going to be teaching people more often than not. By contrast, if you process things slower and generally retain less than most of the people around you, you're going to spend all your time learning. It's not a matter of choice, it's a matter of circumstance. And I personally would rather be the perpetual student. I'd rather
sure, sure,
be
sure,
always learning something. So that's my answer. But what I
sure,
find is a lot of times I'm perpetually teaching. And I think that's
right,
a dangerous place to be sometimes too, because that's uh, um, I think both extremes, and realistically, I don't know if I told you this, but Taoism has a major influence on my philosophy and religion in general,
hmm,
because I always take things to hyperboles in either direction. So when I look at when you take the extreme of being the teacher too often, you can, I would imagine, get an inflated opinion of yourself. If you're constantly teaching, you might start having authoritarian or even just narcissistic tendencies. By contrast, also, if you're always learning, if you're never being the person doing the teaching, you would have the contrast. You'd probably think little of yourself and almost imagine that you don't exist, that you're a fly on
sure,
the wall. So, that being said, I think most of these questions aren't meant for you to walk away and be like, Okay, that's what I think. I literally designed these questions with a Taoist mindset. They're meant to be hyperbolic. They're meant to you have a hard time saying an answer. I didn't make these easy on purpose. I wanted it to instigate conversation. So,
Well, it's hard because it's hard to surround yourself with people who who ignite your fire. You
yeah.
know, it's easy to find people who just go with the flow. You know,
The-
who can't lead. You know, and that's
yeah.
why I stick to myself a lot too.
Well, and also
Me and my wife.
leading itself is not a circumstance of capability either. Sometimes people lead out of impatience. They lead out of arrogance. But I find some of the most capable people are the ones who don't lead because of their apprehension, um, their
I guess
overthinking. You know what I mean?
it's how we perceive leading. So like, there's a difference
Okay,
between being a leader and being a boss.
that's true.
Now, all the things that you just said is I think is a boss sort of mindset.
Hmm.
You know, it's like that picture. I don't, you've probably seen it. It's like the boss is the one in the carriage
Yeah.
whipping the people dragging him,
Yep.
and then you have the leader leading the people. You
Setting an
know,
example
um,
and
setting the example.
yeah,
And I think there's a big difference with that.
big time.
And that's another reason. That's another thing about Trump. That Trump is the boss. You know.
Yes.
Um,
And right
and
now, I think America needs a
he
boss.
doesn't have to set an example. You know,
No,
if someone's not going to get the job done, then he's going to get someone else to do it.
exactly.
Um,
There's no emotion
and
involved. It's not let's think
right.
about how we feel about it. It's we need to get the job done, and we're gonna get it done.
hmm So there's so many dichotomies
Right.
within that world too. I mean, there's bosses that you can respect, and bosses that are assholes, and then sometimes the assholes are respectable. You know, there's a lot of people
Yeah.
that I don't like that I respect.
Well, and a lot of
And
times
then
the assholes can be the ones who get the best bottom line result for the
yeah,
owner.
exactly,
You know, they might be assholes.
exactly,
You might hate them, but when you look at a pure efficiency standpoint, they might be the most
exactly.
viable candidate.
Sure,
So
exactly,
it's all a matter of what your goals and metrics are.
definitely. But yeah, I I I like the leader approach, but I
Yeah.
think there's a time and a place for being the boss for sure.
Yes. Well, and to have a leader that can boss, I think that's the real go-to.
Yeah,
Obviously, that
that too.
you lead by example, but when shit goes sideways, you have to be able to crack the whip and
Right.
not be afraid to do that. But
Yeah, I agree.
but yeah, man, those are
Man, those are really good
those are
questions.
my six
That was
questions.
fun.
Yeah, I spent some time. I took a break for a while. I wasn't doing any content. Like I did some stuff till about March and April, and I took a break from like June through August. So I'm just getting back into it again. And I thought of those questions because I wanted to have a little more structure to the stream. I'm getting a bunch of
Sure.
notifications that the Browns are about to start uh, on my
Uh,
phone. But
like the Browns.
they haven't earned my attention after last week, man. They fell apart on Monday
Yeah,
Night
yeah.
Football. It was a real shame. But
I got a soft spot for the Packers and for the Panthers.
that's
Just because my
right.
dad's from Milwaukee and I'm from the Carolinas, so
I do remember that you were always a fan of the Panthers. I didn't remember Packers
yeah,
because I remember you'd wear Panthers
I,
gear.
yeah. I've been to quite a few Panthers games. My first Panthers game was the Packers. Brett Favre's last year with the Packers. That was cool.
That
So
that, and then he ended up playing for the Vikings, right?
right, yeah,
Go
went
freaking
all the way
figure.
downhill.
But
But yeah, man.
yeah, what I actually meant to ask you. I had a special question for you. What do you think
Okay.
of Kanye's Sunday services and Jesus is King by extension?
You know, I've been seeing stuff about it. I don't know too much about it. I've been seeing him like going to like all these churches and stuff and doing those
He's doing
things.
like
You
outdoor
know,
concerts essentially on
right, right.
Sundays.
I really don't have an opinion on that. I think Kanye is very. I respected him more after him, digging Trump and stuff.
Yeah, at least
In
the open
terms of the
mindedness
religious
of it.
thing, I think in terms of all the you know, I'm an atheist. So I he's making people happy and
Yeah,
stuff, which is fine.
yeah,
Everything's cool. And like I said before, man, like This is my main thing about all that is that it all does good between you and me. Um, just just on a global scale.
Yeah.
It there's no answer.
What I think is funny though is for a lot of people, adding a religious or a gospel twinge to music, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
To some people who are religious, that is a olive branch. It's a sign of peace. But for some people, um, like playing that kind of music, or even Kanye apparently made the assertion, which he said a lot of shit, so take it with a
Hmm.
grain of salt. But he said, "I will never make secular music again. I will." He said, "I'm only gonna make."
Yeah.
So, with that being said, it's like,
Yeah.
is
I didn't know
that
that. I
yeah,
didn't know he said
he
that.
said that recently because he's got his Jesus is King album coming out,
Hmm.
and apparently it's all gospel, it's all
And I
religious
think I
music.
heard some of it, and it's actually really good. Like I love gospel music.
Yeah. Well, he's been playing the one song
It uh-huh.
off graduation or college dropout. I forget which album it was, but Jesus Walks was one of his like early songs, and he's been just like doing a retooled version of one of his early songs. And in that early song, he almost outlined that he wanted to do this a long time ago because one of his main lines is I forget exactly how it goes. For someone who can play music, I'm not very musically inclined. He's like, I can rap about anything except about Jesus. That was like one of his lines. He's like, I can talk about this, and this, and this, but as soon as I talk about Jesus, you guys don't want to give me money, you don't want to give me anything. So he like
Hmm.
almost set himself up for this new album. And I know that his Sunday service has been one of the headline songs. When he plays Jesus Walks, everyone like gets up, and that's when he does the whole piano. I don't know if you've
Right?
seen
Yeah.
the
It's like
gifts of everything. The
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
mean,
fun
it's
to
what.
watch.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that's why I wanted to bring it up is because I think the best thing about Kanye Sunday service is you might have some trad cons, some traditional conservatives, or even traditional conservative Christians who are like, well, that's not church. Church is it's a place of reverence. It's like you can worship your God however you want. And the thing is,
Sure.
realistically, I would say you're still worshiping the same God. But it's like your form of worship does not have to be the same way. If Kanye is getting people hype and doing a live, I love it. To me, like I told you, the concept of
Yeah.
God, it's a place of beauty and a lack of understanding. Because like
Sure.
beauty will never stop being beautiful. And by definition, it is something in the eyes of God. I don't understand it. I don't understand how
Hmm.
certain things I saw as a kid still make me feel like a kid. Like that's
Sure.
God. That's by my definition. I don't understand it. I should have like seen that already.
Really.
Been like, oh, I've seen that sunset. I mean, you still want to see a sunset. It's that kind of concept. So when Kanye
Really.
can like set up a concert and just bring in God to the concept, I think that worst comes to worst, people just reaffirm their atheism. They're like, ah, this is fun, but I'm still atheist. It doesn't like convert you, but to maybe some
Right. Right.
people,
Yeah. Of course.
some of the more nihilistic atheists, it might bring them to God. And I'm not saying people need to come to God, but like let's say you weren't open to it and now you're open to it and you can find some peace. That's the olive branch I'm talking about because there's certain atheists out there who, by providing this album, they're like, oh, this is Kanye's off the deep end, blah blah blah. It's like,
Nah. 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 Nah.
nah,
Nah.
nah,
Nah.
nah.
I never.
There,
Yeah.
it's out there
I.
though.
Did you? Were we friends on Facebook when I was like into my whole super like anti-religious rants and
Oh
stuff
yeah,
on
baby.
Facebook?
I was with you back then.
Okay. Okay.
I've pulled a 180,
Yeah,
man.
man. Yeah, you totally did.
But the thing,
Which is interesting.
yeah.
And it's fine.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, just
Everyone's got to find their peace somewhere.
exactly.
I just know that my peace. I just don't. My peace is I'm chilling. You know.
That's it. I mean, we're
I
talking
don't
the
know.
same language there. Because, like, for me, the
Yeah.
only thing that changed is I was a humanist. Like, you'd mentioned humanism earlier.
Hmm.
And I still think I'm a humanist. I think that most
Yeah.
of the things that people attribute to God, I think it's like a meet me halfway kind of deal. It's like
Hmm.
God will only come to you if you like. And to me, God, it's a concept of the universe itself. It's the equation in the matrix balancing itself out. Is if you set yourself up to be the best guitar musician in that moment, on that second, on a live stage, the universe will provide you the sustenance, the nourishment to rock that shit out. Assuming you've done all the
Sure.
practicing, you've got all the talent. Like, if you've done your half, the universe will provide you the energy you need. And that's part of that is societal. That's all the people watching on stage. Part of that is the energy of the excitement, like it's the emotional side of things. So you can rationalize a lot of those things, but when you just look at it as happenstance, to me that is like explainable through God. That's you can't understand why did Michael Jackson never have a bad performance?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's just stuff like that.
Until his hair caught on fire. But
There's
but
that, but you know what I'm saying?
he, he, yeah, yeah. Here's my source of beauty in all of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I don't know if there's a Big Bang. I don't know if the universe just
Oh yeah,
is from my viewpoint.
yeah.
Um, but when I think about everything, and it's like this is very all Neil deGrasse Tyson related and Carl Sagan. Um,
Oh, you're talking my
but
language, baby.
we all of our everything that all the elements, everything that we're made of is we find in the stars, right?
Yes.
So every time stars explode, it creates these mass abundance of elements
Right.
that
And energy
create
that
everything
ripples
in the
out.
universe.
And it's energy that ripples out, and as far as we know, there's no limit to how far it travels.
Right. And so um, maybe the molecules in my left hand are from one star, and the molecules in my left and my right hand are from another star. And so when you think about things like that, I think, okay, well, we are the universe discovering itself.
Yes.
And
And
every time
every
I think of
second,
that,
like with a refresh rate of the shortest time frame you can think of, it's like constantly refreshing.
mhm.
The universe is
and,
reminding
and
itself. Yeah.
and I think there's nothing more beautiful than that
Yes.
in my opinion, that mistake. And I think that um, that's where the beauty is, because if we're just given this, to me it's not as fulfilling as it is. Okay,
I've gotten
I
shit for
can't believe this
this,
accidentally happened.
but I don't tackle creationism at all. Like,
That's fine.
I mean, I'll entertain the discussion, but from a like foundational like what my belief is. At the end of the day, I just go, I don't know. I don't know.
Sure.
I love to theorize on it, but
Hmm.
the way I look at my life is I don't need to know where the universe came from to
Hmm.
be a loving brother, be a loving son,
Oh yeah,
be a good
of course.
coworker, good friend. Like it's kind of like when people like I don't get into politics. Like I get into politics, but I don't get upset when people don't. It's the same thing with
Right.
religion. Same thing, it's like just because someone doesn't get into it, like it annoys the hell out of me when someone like belittles someone for that. It's like, oh, you don't do that. It's like
That's because they don't know what they're talking about. It's because they're too
exactly.
uncomfortable with what they believe in.
But like you
Like,
talk to that same person on the same token, I guarantee that person knows something about the background of a band, or they know everything about a certain whatever their interest is. It's like just because you can wear yours out on your sleeve and build like
mhm,
I mean everyone's
yeah,
consciousness is connected to something, whether it's useful or not. That's
sure,
subjective, but
yeah, probably.
I don't know. And the thing I don't know. I maybe this is a psychedelic tendency, but I always remind myself like when things are hitting the fan or when things are a little too good. I remind myself it's like I am a brain floating around in a body that like even the fact
Mm,
that I'm having these thoughts is remarkable in the fact that I'm
yeah,
essentially a skin suit. I'm a little like a bone skeleton just
mm,
chilling in some
yeah,
meat
yeah,
right now. Like if you just
right,
remind
yeah,
yourself of that, dude, that humbles me down every time. I'm just like
yeah.
it's amazing
Wait,
that I
I
get up
mean,
every day.
would you be the same person if you had looked differently? If you had just looked
Yeah.
differently,
Or I
you
think of
know?
all the time, it's like when I see someone with a scar or like so, not like a birth deformity, but that too, I guess. but like something that happened along the way. Like I think of all the times like something almost fell on me. It's like, what if I just didn't have an
Yeah.
arm?
Right.
Like I would still have the same life and everything, but I would have done it without an arm or with a scar across
Yeah.
my face or something. You know,
And would you be a different person? Was that
it,
planned? You know, I mean,
exactly.
is
Like,
there a
do you buy
plan?
into the whole multiverse concept? Or at least as I look at it as a way of it's a concept of thought, not necessarily a reality. It doesn't need to be reality in my mind. It's more something just to
Mhm.
theorize. You follow what I'm
Sure, of
saying?
course. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Like you know the concept of like multiverse where like every decision's broken up into a binary where
Right.
it's like yes or no.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
every second
A
you're
lot of
ending this phone call. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. Or I'm ending this phone call.
a lot of that goes into like string theory too, which is some
Yes.
crazy stuff. Yeah.
String theory. I mean, honestly, when you start getting into the mathematical explanations of things, that's
Hmm.
where like what we call art and math really just mesh in a way where it's like,
Well, that's why music is phenomenal too, is because it's all math, you
yes,
know? It's all so calculated, but on our terms.
yes,
You know, I mean, I'd be curious to see other life and another, oh, aliens. I mean,
yeah. I think music is
eh,
probably the best way of capturing the human spirit. Like, when you look at language, like verbal, written, whatever language, that's a way of like capturing like our objective thoughts. But like
mhm,
music, it's a way of capturing like our subjective feelings too. You know, like
for sure.
I can respect a good lyric in a song, but at the end of the day, man, like there's something about classical music that has no the emotion it conveys without one word. You know,
Sure, yeah, yeah.
like you mentioned salsa earlier. It's the same thing. It's like
Hmm.
when you listen to salsa, you know what it's trying to do for you. You
Yeah.
know it's trying
But
to warm your blood a little
it,
bit.
it is crazy though, because it is so mathematic.
It is
And just by a half step, you make something sound happy into something sad,
dark. Yeah,
like
you can make.
quite sad, you
Yep.
know? And man, it's really crazy to think
Well,
about
and
even
you walk a line
being a
of
musician my whole life.
perfection. You walk a line of perfection and imperfection all the time. It's like when you nail a song, you don't miss a single note. There's just something
Mm,
magical about that every time. Like I said about the whole
mm,
skin suit idea. It's like no matter how practiced and polished you are, it's like what if your fingers just didn't work there? You know, it's like
right.
you can know exactly how to do it, but just conveying that to your body that requires a whole nother level of training.
Which is cool because there's things on cello that I can't play. I mean, not that in I've tried practicing and practicing, but
Yeah.
I'm good at doing what I do. And
Yes.
so this is why it's important to never try to be the best, because no one can be better than you can,
Exactly.
you know?
I was gonna say the
So
same thing.
that's yeah.
Because I same thing with trumpet is like my range is pretty respectable now, but I mean there's
Mhm.
certain things I can't even try playing because I can't get up there. Like I can hit a
Right.
triple C. I don't know how much you know about trumpet. I can hit the
Yeah, yeah,
triple
yeah.
C. I can hit it in a song a bit, but
Hmm.
that's the thing is it's like if I ever want to be professional, I'd have to like be able to live at triple C, like make that my
Yeah,
starting
definitely.
note. I'm like I can't do that. It's just
Yeah.
that's at the top of my range. But
See, that's what's cool about songwriting is because that can be a part of you that is that you can call you.
well, and that was the follow up I was going to say is there's plenty of musicians out there live. They don't go up there at all. They stay in the
Right.
lower notes and they just make sure their intonation, their rhythms, their harmonies are on point. And exactly, I was going to say the same thing. I assume you're about to say is that you can live in a different realm just because it's not a professional. It's your brand of the music,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that, you know.
No, nothing wrong with that at all. And
And
that's why I didn't like going to the Cincinnati Conservatory,
yeah,
because it was so orchestral oriented
mm.
that
Oh, we've had this
I didn't want to
conversation.
be
Yeah,
I didn't want yeah I didn't want to be this like cookie cutter musician, you know.
yeah, and
And
that's what
that's
they were.
that's
That's what they're
that's not
trying to
what music
form there.
that's not what music is to me.
No,
And music's not a business. It is like my emotion, you know, and it's helped me a lot deal with my own anxieties and my depression. That's why I still play video games, because I don't even want to think about. I'd rather focus on like this hand-eye coordination skill that I like to build a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And rather than think about,
Well, even if it's not
okay,
competitively, like I like playing a good RPG, just losing yourself in a character for a while, you know.
yeah,
Like
definitely,
I don't know if you
definitely.
played the new Red Dead, dude.
Not yet,
That
man. It looks
story
awesome though.
was, I mean, you talk about
It
like
looks awesome.
playing, you talk about like playing a movie. It's like you get lost in the world of westerns for a while, and
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's just like
I
music too.
did I picked up Minecraft pretty much for the first time not too long
Oh,
ago.
really?
I love Minecraft.
It's a fun game.
It's
I mean,
so
people talk so much shit on it, but it's kind of this weird meme because like you have all these like founders of Minecraft and they like had
mm,
their heyday and like now they
mm,
disparage like anyone who's like doing it like, "Oh, you're late to the party." But it's like at the end of the day,
yeah,
everyone like had their moment where they loved Minecraft.
right.
Oh, it's either that or you never
It, it's
played.
it's gotten repopular again.
Oh, big time.
Um,
I mean, I don't know if you heard,
it,
but PewDiePie, who like founded himself on
yeah,
Minecraft, is back to playing
mm,
Minecraft, even though
yeah,
he said
yeah,
he
yeah.
never wanted to
I've been
play it
watching his
again.
videos.
He's hilarious. I gotta say that guy.
I never watched PewDiePie. I never liked him until I started playing Minecraft.
Oh,
And
okay.
then yeah,
I
my wife
started
watches
following
his bit
him
now.
when he had his
Out of
competition with T
nowhere.
Series. Did you hear about that?
The what?
His whole competition with T Series. T
I
Series.
saw a little bit about it, but I don't know much.
T Series is like a corporation in India that almost every single music video. Think of, I guess it'd be their equivalent of not VH1. Wow, I am brain fried right now. What's
MTV?
MTV? Duh.
Okay.
It's like MTV, but picture if like every single music video was posted on a YouTube channel for an entire country. That's T Series.
Hmm.
And they passed PewDiePie back in April, I think, as the number one subscribed thing on YouTube.
Oh,
But the thing is, PewDiePie, he owned the hype for a while, and he made it
uh-huh.
an internet meme to subscribe to PewDiePie that like other
Yeah,
YouTubers were doing at the end of their videos because it was literally like the state almost, the corporation, the entity, the larger group, the many against the few, and it was him against them. It was this big thing, and I really enjoyed like the way he did the videos. He's like, well, he pretty much acted like a wartime reporter. He's like, well, we're only 1,000 away, you know, we're only 1,000 ahead now. It's
oh
like we're pretty much done. You got to make sure you like subscribe. But he kept the content light
yeah,
and
yeah.
fun. Like that's
Right, right.
where him and as a showman, he was a good showman. It's like I think how many
Yeah,
people would have
definitely.
like had that hot potato and would have burnt themselves, and he like
Right.
handled it properly. And that's to me what art. That's what showmanship is. It's being able to handle that spotlight and like
Well,
not balk on the opportunity.
he just never takes everything so seriously,
No,
man. He's so. I mean, I feel like he'd
well,
be a cool person to hang
his
out
whole
with.
tone, the whole meme Rabiero, he always talks in that like corny voice. Like that's his shtick though.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
his
yeah, definitely.
like our conversation's already been way more serious than anything PewDiePie would ever do. But that's
Yeah,
why he's so successful, the number one YouTuber up until T Series came around. And
right.
it's funny when you think of like I think of all the time how we're gonna be teaching the history of internet to people because realistically it's like eventually like the stratification of the internet the way it started out is kind of set. It's like there's a few pioneers. They're the
Hmm.
first people to hit certain milestones. There's like what was it Justin Bieber's one song on YouTube was like the first to like 4 billion or something. I don't remember. I'm throwing
Right.
numbers out there, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I feel you.
that will always be the first one to get up that quickly. Like I'm sure there'll be songs that do it again. As
Yeah,
it, like anything, like it'd be like running a race, but essentially we just built a new track. And so,
right.
like 20 years from today, we'll still look back and be like, PewDiePie was the first guy to get however the hell many subscribers he had,
Yeah,
and it's like, how are we gonna look back on that?
right.
I think of that stuff in the moment. It's interesting. I'm not. I feel like I've set the stage for like having some insightful thought. I really don't.
I think the next step is just going to be virtual reality. I
Oh,
mean, really. I mean,
you're talking
we
technologically.
have all this like, the YouTube stuff, and then I think 50 years from now, it's going to be like Ready Player One, kind of stuff.
I
And
hope it doesn't ever become that. I'll be
every,
honest.
everyone's going to have their spotlight in a virtual world,
Okay.
and I think that's the next step of the internet.
Yeah,
I think.
I think there's a lot of people going to reject it though. There's going to be a lot more like Ready Player One was pretty much like you couldn't resist. It's like
Yeah,
I
I
like
don't. I
they,
don't think people. It's going to be too easy to access. I think. I mean, I don't think people will reject it, and especially 50 years from now, where the baby boomers are definitely out of the picture. That whole generation, and then parents' generation, and it's just us. As the old people, leading the world.
oh
Like,
yeah, actually I could see, especially the older and uglier we get, I could definitely see that.
yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. That too. I mean,
I
people.
think
That's the thing too.
the real world should be a place for young people, you know. Like in the future. It's like
Should be.
I don't want young people to grow up in future generations. Like okay, let's say like virtual reality becomes like the Facebook for us. you know? It's
Hmm.
like the old young people don't want to go on virtual reality because it's a bunch of old people with young hot avatars and they're like, ah, fuck this place. I want that to be they should reject virtual reality. And this is a prediction I'll make. Is if virtual reality becomes as propagated as you say, which I'm not denying could happen. My guess is that the younger generations will, by contrast, reject it because that's where we're at and they want to stay away. They want their own. Every next generation wants their own varied slice of the pie, you know?
Yeah.
So I'd say you'd probably have one generation like ours, or maybe the next one that has virtual reality, and the next one's gonna be like fuck virtual reality. And I think that's like a good, healthy thing.
It's nice to think, but I really do think that if someone makes it so accessible, and we have the power to create our own worlds and to create where anything is possible, it's just too hard to not.
I look at that as Pandora's box, and maybe I'm in the minority here, but like anything is possible is not always a good thing, especially historically. If you look at
No, I'm not saying
mankind,
it's a good or bad thing
yeah,
necessarily. I mean,
I think
I
we're
guess
gonna
I
have a
don't
lot of
mind.
growing pains with it, just like we're having with social media. I mean,
Hmm.
one thing that's not discussed very often is social media
Yeah,
addiction, and
right.
I've had to set up guidelines in my own life because
Me too.
I was scrolling too often, I was posting too much. I
Hmm.
just all I had to remind myself was it's like anything I do on social media will not. I was gonna say will not affect my life. That's not true. It will, but
Hmm.
it's not gonna create the change I need. How about that? You know,
Well, this is why this is so nice because
you're saying like long form
I am
conversation.
used to that social media addiction,
Yeah,
and I'm way better at typing out and thinking about my ideas and wording things and way better than I am speaking. That's for
I'm
damn
working on
sure.
speaking.
Yeah.
This definitely
Yeah,
helps. I'll put it that way.
I think you're great, man. I feel like if I did this more, I'd be a lot smoother.
Yeah,
But my mind just doesn't really work in that fluidity.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and
so
I think that's why having like a varied group of people on this show is going to be good. It's like I don't
yeah,
think having fluid conversation every time is what people want to hear. Sometimes it's nice to like I don't know, I stutter sometimes. I'm not perfect either, but like I don't know if it's the fragmentation of thought you're talking about. I think that's a very
mhm,
authentic thing. Is like when all you watch is like late night comedy and everyone's quips, everyone's one liners, everyone's on it. You're just
mhm,
like
yeah,
that's not conversations I have. Like the way we're talking, this is the way
right,
people are talking at work. This is the way they're talking. Like
yeah.
that's why I'm creating this. Like
That's the
one, because
amazing
I
thing
like
about.
it. Two, I just think that this is the future of things. Is you know you're watching these clips on the news and everything. It's too polished and prim. Is like I think like
Mhm,
a decentralization of the political conversation is the future. It's
mhm,
knowing the person personally that is discussing the news with you. I mean, realistically, I'd like to make this a full time job where I'm going
yeah,
live 7 days a week. Where I'm like, okay, so Joker just came out today. What do you think about it? You know,
right,
or something like that. Joker's one of the videos I did last week. So
yeah.
it's
Well,
stuff like that.
don't stop, man. I think you have a great start on this,
I
and
appreciate it.
like I said, man, if you ever want like a cool opening, like graphics and music, just let us know.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm gonna have to do in the next month or so. I just want to, like I
That's
said, I
fine.
just changed the setup as soon as I know what I'm doing. Because actually, my homework is I'm probably gonna do an intro, and
Hmm.
then once I record an intro, I might see if you have some ideas for how you'd want to maybe do a musical piece for it. I'll compensate you for your time, of course.
It'd be more, it could be anything you want. I mean, I love classical stuff, and I also love, I like classical hip hoppy kind of stuff too.
That's it, man.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
all I know is
and my
Trent.
wife's an amazing artist and graphic designer and stuff. So
That's awesome. So how's her English? Good.
yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
Like
Okay.
you'd never be able to tell that she's from here.
Okay. Cool.
Like it's funny because I'm from Columbia, South Carolina,
Okay.
and so people like if they meet us in because we lived in South Carolina for a little while,
Yeah.
um, and people were like, she's like, I'm from Columbia. She said, oh, cool. It's like, what are you doing at Hartsville? But they didn't think that she was from Colombia. They thought she was from
Colombia.
Columbia, South
Colombia. Yeah.
Carolina.
Colombia. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure you know the difference in pronunciation by now.
yeah, Colombia.
Colombia. Yeah, there you go. You got the right accent. You probably heard it enough times. and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
for sure.
they are proud of their pronunciation of that too.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely.
well,
Well, dude,
I was about to say we're an hour and a half. It's been good.
yeah, yeah. It's been a very fruitful conversation.
Yeah, man.
I haven't conversed like this in a while. It's usually just typing.
Well, and I don't know, man. I'm looking at the Discord server. I don't know if we just didn't get any chats or it didn't connect. Something I have to look at after the stream here. But I'd like to do this again if you ever have time. I'm looking to try to make this
I'd love to.
Sunday noon thing consistently because with my work
For
schedule
sure.
now, it's the only thing I can consistently do. And I think like having a stream like this, trying to have a live audience, consistency is like the most important thing. So if
Definitely,
you
man. Well, if you don't have anyone to talk to, sometimes just let me know.
you
I'm
took
always
the
down
words
to
right
talk about
out of my
anything.
mouth, brother. I was gonna say I'm trying to line up different
Yeah.
people, but if I don't have someone, I'd love to have you on
Yeah.
again.
And if I think of, I know some cool people, man. Like
Yeah,
who I'll try to find some names and whatnot, and
sure. Like I
let you
said, my
know.
goal is diversity of thought.
Yeah,
The more different heads I can get to open up on this, because like I said, I'm asked those same questions. I love to hear what different takes are. I think the biggest thing is just having because the confidence to do this, and then having the capability to. I mean, can you say for anyone potentially listening right now, was it very difficult to do the Skype call, or did I pretty much do most of the
no,
work on my end?
no. I mean, you made it very like just step by step, perfect.
That's it. I've
So
had a few people that I really want to have on the show, so I just wanted to have like a testimonial that it's not that hard.
definitely,
As long as you can
no,
just
not
do a
at all.
Skype call and have your
Just have like decent internet and good good at least decent mic and whatever. You're fine.
that's it. All right, man. Let's
All right, Marcus.
wrap it up. It's been good. Peace.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Thanks for having me.